Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Combat Craig, and today we're talking about major changes to mental health rating criteria. I have Raider X with me. Why don't you say hi to the folks?
What's up, fuckers?
That's one way to say hi to the folks.
Hi,
And
folks.
between two of us here, we're going to do some screen sharing, kind of show you the what's going on in the regulations, some of the stuff that stood out to me, some of the stuff that stands out to Raider X. And before we hop into it, if you want to learn more about the VA claims process, check out my boot camp. You can sign up at combatcraig.com, and VA claims all come down to medical evidence. If you need medical evidence, my med team can help you. Again, combatcraig.com is where you would go for that. And let's bring Raider X on. Been a while since I've done the live stuff. What's up, dude?
Another day in paradise. At least the weather here where I'm at is a lot nicer than it had been in the past 3 months.
Yep, no sympathy about weather at all. If you have weather problems, move north. Snow is better than heat, is what I've been finding out. But I'm glad to hear that it's not 10,000 degrees in Texas. But that'll
No,
change because Texas has the weirdest weather, I think, in the country. Also, my experience.
but they say wait 5 minutes and it'll change. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it changed a lot just driving across it when I moved my friend to Florida. All right, so let's let's just kind of let me go to the screen share here. So here's the I'll put a link to this page here that shows the changes if you want to go look at them. Um, just kind of up at the top here, supplementary information, the need for updated criteria. So this part is basically they were using the DSM-4 or cobbling together parts of the DSM-4, and now they're officially using the DSM-5. Raider X, is that your take on that?
Yeah, it's consolidating everything. So you're not bouncing back and forth between the two, with the DSM-5 being the most up to date manual for the mental disorders. They just want to go with what's the most up to date. That way you're not using old information, or you're not pulling from old information.
It's kind of funny about that. Do you know when the DSM-5 came out to replace the DSM-4, like in the real world, not the VA world? Like I think it was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Because when I first started rating in 2010, so I first started rating, 14 years ago now. In 2010, we were still using the DSM-4, but probably within a couple of years after. So we switched to the DSM-5 pretty much as soon as the real world did.
Well, I mean, but this now we're officially, or they are officially
Yes,
doing.
officially yes,
So
but
it's
I mean,
just
but
kind
we
of funny, that's the point that I was trying to make. Like this was done 10 years ago, and the good old government is like so far behind. Now it's official; they're not using bits and pieces. It's all DSM-5. So if
right.
you're reading along at home and you know anything about the DSM-4 versus 5, or you know more than that and you've been trying to mix the two together, no longer need to do that. It's all DSM-5 from here on out. Another thing that, let me go back to the screen share thing. I don't have my little clicker thing because everything was fighting me this morning. And we're not going to go through every thing on here. You guys can read it. I'm just going through some stuff that I think is important and things you should know. And one of them is ICD codes. I mentioned those a lot, and just kind of wanted to, there's a little snippet in here. So the ICD is a standard tool for the diagnosis of disabilities for the purposes of epidemiology, health management, and clinical practice. So the ICD code is the actual code. And when you're talking about a current diagnosis, do I have one? How do I look at all that kind of stuff? You'll have problem lists. And do you know what? Oh, SCT numbers. Those should work as a diagnosis, but it's not a diagnostic code. So we're not going for should works or maybe will work or fuck this, that, or the other thing. If you're looking for a diagnosis, go get one written down with an ICD code. Is my thought on that. What about you, Raider X?
I would definitely agree with that. It's the ICD code is similar with to like to how like the VA does theirs with the diagnostic code has a corresponding number. So like if you were to and I'm kind of doing this on the fly.
On the fly is cool. And while you're looking something up, you may be
So
able to do this.
okay,
Oh,
so
go
like
ahead.
like the ICD code for PTSD is F43.10. So you can actually look that ICD code up and it would give you, the definition for that on how that's defined. Or
Uh,
like, for example.
here's the part that I wanted to get into.
Okay.
Like when you're trying to figure out something, trying to figure out if all your ratings are static, the place you go look is your rating code sheet. So in your
Correct.
rating code sheet, that shows all your static disabilities, and that's where they show the ICD codes. Like that's why ICD codes are important in my mind versus say SCT or whatever that other thing is. That
Oh,
problem
your
list
ICD
thing.
code's not on your code sheet. Your ICD code's not in
No,
your
no,
code sheet.
exactly. So
It's on your
it's
exam.
in your medical records. If you're looking in your medical records, your VA medical records, you'll see problem lists and SCT. Those are not diagnostic codes. They can be used. They might be used, but nothing replaces a ICD code. So get one, especially for PTSD.
Yeah, the ICD code. You'll also find them on your VA exams. They'll list the diagnosis, and then they're a lot of times you'll see a corresponding ICD code next to it. But usually that's the only two places you're going to see it.
And that's what you want to ultimately get. If you want to know for sure, you have a diagnostic code and a diagnosis. If there's an ICD code, you're good. The other thing I wanted to kind of go scroll through here was the GAF. Where is it?
Your
This
GAF
is
is
it.
your Global Assessment of Functioning.
Right.
That GAF
So
stands for, and that was a DSM-4 thing. So you're not gonna. So we're no longer using it because we switched over to 5. GAF is not a part of the GS or DSM-5, so that's why it's no longer being used.
you would so like when that switchover happened, when you went from 4 to 5, uh, GAP scores were no longer used for rating purposes. So this has been 10 years. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and they've
Okay.
updated the DBQs to reflect GAF no longer being used. So in the older DBQs, it actually the GAF went from 0 to 100. So the lower the number, the more mentally sound you were. The higher the number, the more fucked up you were.
Yep.
So, um, but that's so subjective because it's based on like a sample of 25 questions, and you got so many points based on how you answered those questions and all that crap. So now they
But
just
let me cut you off here. So the reason that I'm talking about GAF scores is we get those GAF self-assessment tests a lot. The doctor will hand it to you, and he may even look at your answers because when he looks at my answers, I'm always at 100. It's like people are happy ever in their life, and they go outside, like in the real outside, out inside of outside of my basement. So I just answer them the way my life is, and it's been pretty consistent. But that is not something that's going to translate into rating purposes. And you're right, it is a self assessment and it is 100% subjective. But typically, a doctor, or in my case, the doctor's been handing it to me. So if he wants to look at those, look at it and ask questions, then it could become more of the record. But
let me clarify one thing. It's flip flopped. So actually, the lower the score, or the higher the score, the more normal you are. So like 61 to 100 is considered normal on a GAF score. So if you're like in the teens, you're pretty fucked up. I had it flip flopped. It's the other way around. So you're higher your GAF number, the more normal you're considered. So just to
okay.
clarify that.
And either way, GAP scores are no longer used. It's going to be something like that. You're going to see self-assessments. I don't know what's out there, private insurance versus or private doctor versus VA doctor. Those things can change, but you're going to see these questionnaires, and he may ask you about the questionnaires. Just answer them accurately. And speaking of questionnaires and things like that, this is another kind of example where there's like the GAF score is kind of in the mix, but it's not going to be used when it goes to you for rating purposes. So if you need a doctor to actually clear that up and give you a diagnosis, write your symptoms down on a DBQ, check out our med team. And there's a link in the description to combatcraig.com. And while you're there, sign up for my boot camp. We have live sessions. We're actually having one tomorrow night. And, you can ask me questions and all that kind of stuff. And let's move on.
Well,
Or did you have something to say?
no, I have one more thing because there is an assessment that you do not want to get. It's called a SIMS test, which is your
the lingering one, right?
yes, that's a systematic inventory of malingering symptomatology. If they hand you a SIMS test, they think you're full of shit and they want to test to make sure you aren't. They ask you, they're going to ask you the same question a bunch of different ways, and based on how you answer it, they can tell if you're full of shit or if you're over exaggerating your symptomatology, whatever the case might be. You don't want a SIMS test because the doctor is clearly suspecting something's up. So, yeah, that's the assessment you do not want in the mental health world.
And this is something we talk about. This is like reality. You either have these symptoms or you don't have them. Don't lie, exaggerate, stretch. Like, don't fucking lie about it. It's not only is it illegal and bullshit, it's not going to help you. And kind of going into that more, there's kind of different levels of the. I mean, malingering is a strong word. That is one word, and you're 100% right. The SIMS test is associated with it, but there's kind of the path before that, and veterans changing his story around a lot. It's good to find out where you are and all that. How does the VA do they just think you're full of shit or a liar? You would go get your rating your VA claims file and review notes and do keyword searches for lying piece of shit, malingerer. But for sure, by the time you get that SIMS test, you already know what that answer is. They think you're a fucking liar. That
Or at minimum exaggerating.
liar also same thing. That's a kind word for it. All right. Let's see. Uh, let's see the PTSD thing. So this and then if you have some, I'm just kind of cherry picking through here some of the things that stood out to me. So with regard to PTSD, more wars mean more PTSD is a way the VA is looking at it. So that's one of the other reasons they're trying to do that, or they're updating things. I don't even know if this is the right highlighted thing on here. Anyway, I'll just skip it back over to you. So more wars means more PTSD. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, that kind of comes with the territory. I mean, you put somebody in a combat situation and, you're going to see shit that you have no business seeing, wanting to see, or ever want to see again. I mean, you're dealing with killing of another person. I mean, war, that's part of war. It's part of hand-to-hand combat. It's going to fuck you up to a certain extent.
Yep.
Some people handle it better than others, but I mean, there's a reason why only 1% of the population are veterans. Not everyone can do this.
Right. Yep, definitely. And not every one of us knew exactly what we're signing up for. Exactly, because I don't read instructions or any fine print, so I definitely missed that. But yep, surprise, you're in a war.
Well,
You know
even
what's
less of
interesting about this? What's interesting about this PTSD thing? Just kind of this is just specifically for combat PTSD, and that's one of two types of PTSD, right? That's rateable. There's non-combat PTSD. So I probably that goes up too. I've talked to a lot of Vietnam veterans that fall in that kind of other category. So I guess they're right. All PTSD goes up.
Well, and MST goes up too. I mean, it's
That's
all
yeah,
correlation with all of it.
yep, yep. Military sexual trauma. Yeah, do you think it's fair to say that military sexual trauma happens more in wartime? Probably, huh? Than normal, I guess.
I think it happens across the board, but yeah, probably more so in wartime, more frustrations being
Yeah,
let out. I mean, yeah, I'll be interested to see a survey or a study on that, but that would definitely be a good hypothesis for a study for sure.
yep. Yeah, and there's a lot more since I've gotten involved with this channel or started this channel. I really, and the numbers are not reflective. There's a lot more male on male rape and stuff like that. I just never really thought about it, but I've learned a lot about it now. And people will tell me they've been, they're 80 years old and they've been carrying this around their whole life. And so, like, whatever, you're a victim, you're a survivor, or you were a victim, now you're a survivor. Now go file a claim for it. And if you're going to prove a military sexual trauma claim, stuff about this. What are some good examples of or what kind of stuff do you need? Because for the combat PTSD, you need to have the symptoms, you need to have the diagnosis. The initial comes from the VA, and the nexus is on your DD 214 that says you were in a combat situation. So, how do those three things play out in military sexual trauma? Because you were rating them and stuff.
Right. Well, before we get to the MST component, also keep in mind if you have like a, combat action badge, combat action ribbon, that actually concedes the stressor. So you wouldn't necessarily have to have that in your records that you were shot or you were involved with a TBI or anything like that. The fact that you have the combat action badge, combat action ribbon, things of those natures, that actually concedes it. So that's a positive as far as conceding that as well. But over on the MST side, that deals more with markers because, and I'll get to the markers in a second, but because it's so underreported and not documented for various reasons that if you want to go into it, we can go into it. But I mean, it's a very underdocumented, because it's so personal. It's a personal violation, whether that be sexual harassment's considered can be considered under MST. Assault. It all falls under that same MST umbrella, but they're more so looking for markers just because it's underreported. So if you went in for an STD test, you wouldn't have to report somebody was a victim of a rape or something. You go in for a random you know a random STD test after an incident, after the incident happened. That would be considered a marker. So what they do is they review both your, or you have bad performance after an incident. So you're a 4.0 soldier, sailor, or whatever, and now your marks are like in the 3.0, 2.0. So it shows a downward kind of decline in your performance. You're asking for transfers, things of that nature. Those are what's called markers, and that's what the examiner is looking at when they offer the opinion. They're looking at the evidence of record, obviously things that are documented, as well as markers to make a determination on whether the claimed event is is least as likely as not due to their military service.
Speaking of markers, after Desert Storm happened and I had my stressor, that it was one marker that was the getting kicked out. I just was unsavable, like something definitely, I wasn't like, class A, always failed my white glove inspections and stuff, but I was solid, and then I became unsolid and got
Marker
kicked out, general discharge and stuff. So that kind of
That's
that
definitely
kind
an
of paper
example.
trail is there. What's that?
That is definitely an example of a marker. A
Yeah,
downgraded
yeah,
just
exactly.
to general, that's definitely a marker for sure.
And just like me going through that, the way it affected me, whatever. I'm a pussy. I didn't know I was such a pussy. Shouldn't have joined the military. Hindsight's good for things like that. So PTSD, mental health conditions, they show up in different ways. Marker is one way to do it. Looking through your medical records, you would, because that's what you guys are doing, right? You
Right.
guys are looking through those, so it would be helpful. Again, this is your VA claims file. Look through your stuff to see what's in there that will be positive and or negative for your claim, right?
Let me be clear. Let me be clear on one thing. Markers are only related to MST due to PTSD due to MST. It's not non-combat related PTSD like you witnessed a car accident and you got PTSD. That's no bueno. It's only the markers are only due to MST. The markers aren't considered in any other form of PTSD other than MST. That is a very
So
clear
I
distinction
guess okay,
that needs.
yeah, yeah, that's a good point. So like and I didn't even really think it was useful for the claim, but like in my case, since like that was a marker, uh, that would have to me explaining that to a doctor, and then a doctor taking those words and then fitting them appropriately into the DBQ, which I guess really wouldn't be about the marker. It'd be more about the current symptoms, right? Social and
Well,
occupational impairment.
right. Well, the current symptoms are gonna like, and if we want to pull up a
Yeah,
copy,
no, I got you. I got you. The markers are kind of in the past to build it up. Yeah, I don't know. I understand. I hope everybody else does. If you want to elaborate, please do. I think you already
what?
did.
Yeah, I think we're fine.
All right. So let's talk about the functional impairments, occupational impairments, uh, the changes to the way they're doing that, and then also they're doing away with the 0% rating, which is a bullshit thing to even have on there anyway. Right? It's like doesn't even need to be mentioned if you don't have a condition. You don't need a zero, but you have a different view on that too. Let's start with that. So what are the changes to the actual ratings? And I'll give it
Well,
to you.
uh, mental health is going to be rated a lot more similar to how TBI is currently rated, which makes sense because 99% of TBI and mental health are intertwined anyways. So it makes sense that the rating criteria is similar. There's definitely distinct differences, but it is a similar because you're looking at 1 through 4 kind of level, or actually it's 0 through 4, 0 being none, 1 being mild, moderate, severe.
Mild, moderate. I have it on screen. So we have
Yeah,
none, mild, moderate, severe, and then total.
right. But there's 6 domains. So each domain is dealing with a different area of functional impairment. So where the current functional impairment with a rating schedule, I'll be curious to see how the new DBQ is going to look, because you've got cognition is one domain, interpersonal interactions and relationships is another domain, and each of these domains are defined, and we can get into the definitions of that if we
Yeah, I'm
want to.
trying to find it, but yeah, keep
Um,
going.
the next one is task completion and life activities, and then we have navigating environments, and then the final one
Yeah,
is
well,
self.
where? Let me. Where is this?
This is
Uh, okay, task completion in life. Okay,
yeah,
okay. Let me get this
three.
data. All right, so
Okay.
so cognition is the first one. Is that what you said?
Yes.
All right,
And it,
so
and
that's
it basically
this
explains right
one
there.
right
So the
here.
assess would assess a veteran's mental processing involved in gaining knowledge and comprehension. These processes include, but are not limited to, memory, concentration, attention, goal setting, speed of processing information, planning, organizing, prioritizing, problem solving, judgment, decision making, or flexibility and adapting when appropriate. So, kind of sounds like those check boxes on the current DBQ, don't you think?
Yep. Yep. Totally.
The next one, interpersonal interactions, relationships, would assess a veteran's ability to effectively interact with other people in both social and occupational settings and participate in society. This domain includes both informal, social, and associational, and formal, co-workers, supervisors, and those sort of relationships.
And then
Uh,
on this, the social impairment here is different, and I think it's one of the harder concepts for veterans with mental health conditions that want to file claims, because we're kind of used to this, I don't know, Social Security model where it's all based on, and or like workers' comp and those kinds of things, where everything is based on your ability to work and what you could do at work. And with
that's
VA ratings, they also consider your social life. So it's just weird, kind of upfront talking about how you don't have a relationship with your daughter or your son or somebody in your family just isn't working or is estranged or something like that, and just being socially awkward. All that stuff uh, can and will come into play here. So that's kind of what you're talking about, right?
yeah. All right, so the
Okay.
next one is going to be task completion and life activities, and that would assess a veteran's ability to manage task-related demands. This domain includes, but is not limited to, the following types of activities: vocational, holding a job; educational, going to school; domestic chores, doing shit around the house; um, social, and caregiving, being able to take care of yourself, take care of others. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Navigating environments is the next one. Would assess a veteran's physical and mental ability to go from place to place. This domain includes, but it's not limited to, the following: leaving the home, being in confined or crowded spaces, independently moving in surroundings, navigating new environments, driving, using public transportation. So how are you, inside and outside of the home? How are you in restaurants? How are you, define the environment? That kind of deals with how you are in socially and those sort of things. And then, self care is the last one, and that's the ability of to taking care of yourself, which would include but not limit to hygiene, dressing appropriately, nourishment. And nourishment can, eating or forgetting to eat, not eating, not taking care of yourself. I mean, it all falls under self care.
So in this one, I have a little note on it. I think it's because I hear it a lot and people ask me about it a lot. And then I just kind of apply this to myself. So, like, I take care of myself, not very well, but I can care for myself. So, I'm not going to go into a C&P exam more disheveled or stinky because I'm like, I take too many showers every day and I have decent looking clothes and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to come up because it's lying, in my mind. Showing up, how just show up however you are. If you wear a suit to bed and around the house, or instead of wearing boxers or whatever, then show up in a suit. But if you don't do that, don't show up in your boxers probably, but don't show up in a suit. This one is this one is hard. This one's easy to talk yourself into, I think. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I mean, I mean, you dress appropriately so you don't get arrested, but I mean, you don't have to overdo it. I mean, you're there to present yourself on how you are on a regular basis. You're not there. I mean, you're not if you're dressing up in a suit, you're not giving your true representation of yourself. So you're not being
Unless you wear a suit all the time, which is
well, right,
fucking
right.
stupid.
I'm saying, but if that's not your normal attire, then it makes
Right.
no sense. You want to present yourself as you are, I mean, so a proper evaluation can be given.
And these things, and walking over this line, it's not a gray area line. This is black and white. This is lying stuff, malingering stuff, Sims test kind of stuff. So if you go in there and you're talking about your problems, you're in an exam and you got to talk about all these problems. None of these things are fun or cool to talk about. They're embarrassing, and you should be crying because it's so pathetic. That's what happened to me, or that's where you need to get to. Unembarrassed about it because you need to talk about it. So you don't need to add or embellish. There's a, if you deserve a 70% rating, which I believe most veterans do deserve, then tell, go through all this stuff, answer the questions that he's asking, and you don't need to add in stuff like for self care, for example, if that makes sense. And then another thing about this is, let's see. So it says, let me get over the screenshot. So this is just kind of VA bullshit stuff. So we just went through the self care. So this domain would include, but would not be limited to, and they give you a couple examples: hygiene, dressing appropriately, or nourishment. So one of the things the VA does across the board is they don't spell out exactly what you need, which would be nice. Like if you have this, this, and this. So basically, this domain would include, but would not be limited to, means it could be anything. That's just right.
Subjectivity is the name of the game with the VA. There is so
Yeah.
much subjectivity. Yeah. And I think that's done intentionally.
Yeah, I think so too. It when you're reading it, it does look weird. It's weird like that by design, and it's about our money, and they want to keep our money. So they do. There's lots of gamesmanship going on here. But kind of to your point, in the MST with the MST claim, for example, that's where markers would show up. They don't show up in other. They don't show up in non-combat, like automobile
Oh,
accidents
yeah,
or anything that does some
show
MST.
up, you can't use them. The markers can show up
That's what I
anywhere.
mean.
You can't use them as far as the evaluation is concerned. As far as,
Right.
you can't use a marker to prove or disprove something if it's not MST related.
And combat veterans. We just have that label slapped on us. So if Uncle Bill is like, wow, you should go file a. First of all, don't listen to Uncle Bill. He has his rating and his disability, and they're nothing like yours. And one example is if you're a combat veteran and he's not, or vice versa. That works. That worked in my case for the stressor. I mean, not for the stressor as the nexus, but it might not work in your case. So understanding how the VA rates stuff is crucial, because if you have markers and it's a MST claim, it's usable. If it's not, the markers aren't usable. So it's good to know what's usable, what they're going to consider, and what they're not going to consider, because you want to put forward the evidence that's going to prove your claim using stuff that we're going to consider. They being this guy, what he used to do,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Now, can we take one step back, and I want to talk about, when you mentioned there's going to be no longer a 0% evaluation. When we
Yeah.
look,
Let me get back over to this. Let me get back over to that part of it. But go for it. Yep.
okay, so the new one's going to be, 10, 30, 50, 70, 100. Now, the reason they're not going to do a 0, and this is more toward the TBI related thing. So in your six domains, if you have a 0 or a none in each of these 6 domains, you don't have a diagnosis of the condition, because in cognition, none; interpersonal interactions, relationship, none; task completion, life activities, none; navigating environments, none; self-care, none. You have no difficulties, so therefore you have no diagnosis of the condition. So without a diagnosis, there's nothing to give you. So that's why if you have at least one that comes off as mild, that's that you need at least the one mild to get a diagnosis, and that gets you the 10% minimum. So
And I'm
that's
showing this part. I'm showing this part right. I'm showing this part right now. I guess we'll just kind of go in. Do you have that part? Is
yeah.
that what you're looking at? All right. So I'll throw that on the screen here, and yeah, let's just talk through the disability rating. the score, which is the level of impairment 0 through 4, and then the number of affected domains. I know you kind of started that, but I want to kind of like whatever timestamp it.
Well, I started at what the definitions were for each one, but yeah, and then we probably
Okay.
should go over that. None would be no difficulties associated with a particular domain. Mild, which is slight difficulties in one or more aspects of the domain that do not interfere with tasks, activities, or relationships. A
So
moderate,
one, just to cut you off here, I'm just kind of going from the bottom up. So 0 means 0. One in one domain is it says 10 minimum rating. What does that mean?
that means you had a 1 in at least, well, we read about it where you see the 30, where it says
Yeah,
1, 1 in 2 or more
in two of
domains.
them. Yeah.
So you have 2 1s to get the 30. The 10% minimum rating
Okay, so you
means
have one is
at
probably a
least 1.
10. Yeah. Okay. And
Yeah.
then as we're going up to, and then 50 kind of has two. That's similar to the other one, and 70. Well, 50 and 70. So 50, you have a score of 2 in one domain, and 2 means moderate impairment that occurs 25% or more of the time, or severe impairment that occurs less than 25% of the time. Boy,
And
that
that's
could be
2 days a week.
right.
If you're looking at 25% of the time based off a 7-day week, that's, you've got moderate impairment 2 days a week.
Now, is this something that's good that you bring that up? Is this something that is it only looked at weekly, or could I be good for 2 weeks and have no problems, in the last 2 weeks I'm just totally shit like the whole way through?
And defined, generally speaking, we kind of looked at it over a month, over a period of a month.
Okay,
So,
so yeah, that's good.
so if
So
so,
I
you
would
20,
so my scenario would be captured, and the one you laid out would also be captured.
yeah, 25% of the time is a week. Over the course of a month, you might have a week's worth of problems over the course of a month. If you wanted to break that down, it could be, 2 times a week. That's 8 times a month. That's 25% of the time.
Now, when just kind of hopping over to something else, chronic fatigue syndrome, that is measured by the year. So the 60% rating is 6 weeks of incapacitation over the period of a year, which I definitely have that. So, like in that one, that's measured by the year. Is that so? And I guess that's what makes this difficult. It's subjective. We don't know when our good days or bad days are going to be until we are in the good or bad day. So there's some flexibility here. Having a doctor write this stuff down on DBQ is the way you land this.
Until we see this on, in the rating schedule, and it's actually, I mean, yes, this is these are what's going to be in there, but until it's, the final version is released in the rating schedule, we're not going to know these specific things, until the M21 is updated, to say, okay, like for chronic fatigue syndrome, 6 weeks over a year. Well, for mental health, it might be, over the course of a month. Migraine headaches are another one, which has the time component, X amount of prostrating attacks over, a certain amount of time, for migraine. So until the final process is published, we're not going to know what sort of timetable is put on it. But I could just, say a lot of times we were looking at it, on a monthly basis,
And
incidents
this
per month.
this is another good point. What we're looking at is whoever wrote this, Congressy kind of people. This still needs to get over to the VA and then retranslated. So it's definitely not going to be the same, right?
Yeah. Well, it was posted by the Department of Veterans. I mean, the VA is the one who posted it, so I mean, they're the ones who did it. But I mean, until the final action is put on paper and into the rating schedule, to where, okay, now it's in black and white. Yes, these
Where
are
the
all the
CFR is updated, you mean, and the
correct.
M21-1 is the adjudication manual, which is basically the policies and procedures for VA raters to use. They're not for us. It's good for it's good for us to know them. It's what VA raters are supposed to use, but the law overrides everything. The CFR overrides what raters aren't supposed to do. I mean, there are policies and guidelines, but they're not the law.
Correct. Correct.
All right. So did we? Let's keep going on that.
Okay,
So
so
we're
now
at
we
50.
right. So you have to have a two, which is a moderate in in at least one domain. There's two ways to get a 70%. You either get a moderate in two of the domains, or you can get a severe impairment in one of the domains. And then for the 100%, you either need uh, severe impairment in two of the domains or a total impairment in one of the domains. And a total
Okay.
impairment that occurs 25% or more of the time. Let's just go to, I don't know, you never shower. Um,
Hallucinations.
well, yeah, but I mean, but if you just, I mean, if you're just looking at just, you do a shitty job in taking care of yourself. You don't shower, you don't dress appropriately. If you get a total on that just for self care alone, and you get a 4, or even if you get a 3, that's an automatic 70. A single 3 will get you a 70, right?
Right.
No, no, in two, no, yeah, a 3 in self
In
care.
one domain. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's 25% of the time. So, if you don't shower for 2 weeks a month, well, that'd actually be 50% of the time. But if you don't shower for a week at a time, you take one shower a week. I mean, you can see how
So
somebody.
let's just break this down for Combat Craig for Dummies style because I'm bad at math. So 25% of the time, you were saying that's 2 days a week.
2 days a week, or let's just do it on a monthly basis because then 25% of the time is a week.
Week. Okay. So yeah, that's a better, easier way for me to wrap my head around it. So 50% of the time is 2 weeks.
Yeah.
75% of the time is 3 weeks, and then 100% is all month long. So
Yes.
that's one way to do it. And since there's 7 days in a week, the breakup's a little different. So it could be 2 or 3. And then
Right.
50% of the time is 3 or 4. And that's kind of why some of these are staggered up a little bit. And then also when you get your decision letter, all of the time, there'll be an explanation in there saying we gave you a 50% rating for mental health, and I'll explain we could have given you a 70, and we also could have gone down and given you a 30. That's pretty standard across the board, right? That language we could have gone if it applies, and it does with mental health.
Yes, yeah, and I would say looking at these domains, these 6 domains, the easiest one to get a high score on would be, and I'm not telling you it's the bullshit. You got to be honest with yourself. But the easiest one to get a higher score would be self care, and that's kind of like I said, you don't shower, you wear shitty ass clothing, whatever you smell, you don't brush your teeth. I mean, it would be pretty easy to pop a decent score on that. Navigating environments. All too well about this one, Combat Craig, as far as leaving the home. Not wanting to be in.
Let me interrupt you because this is important. So this is what I'm talking about. The self care part is just a no go for me. It's not a. I'm the opposite. I want too many showers and smelling too good and looking too whatever. So it just doesn't fit for me. So it's not something I'm going to go after. I don't need to do it. It's just not one of my symptom things. But the fact that you said all too well about that, this is one that affects me. So I just wanted to hop in and point that out. The things that
Right.
affects you, those are the things you want to lean in and explore. If they don't try to fit it. Don't try to fit them on you. It's not going to fit, and it's probably lying.
Right. But like I said, in each of these 6, obviously, I like the way they break it down as far as the categories go. Except those are the ones that make sense. But you're
You
gonna,
mean the mild, moderate, severe? Those are
No,
categories?
no, the cognition, the domains. I like the way they break down the domains as far as these are domains that make sense. Cognition, interpersonal interactions and relationships, task completion, life
Task completion, life activities, navigating environments. Yeah.
activities. So, I like the way that that's broken down. Um, because
Yeah,
like
you
the
know
task,
what? That actually does make more sense because right now it's social and occupational impairment. The way the verbiage is in the law, this is the part that's going to actually get the update. And yeah, this makes more sense to me as well. Navigating environments is a better way to understand the whole hypervigilance and all the bullshit that goes along with that and the road rage and like everything on that list affects me for sure. Navigating environments, I'm terrible.
so you probably you more you more than likely would probably get a 3 in that category, which would get you a 70%.
Right. Yep. Totally. Yeah, I would definitely get three, probably more. There would be an argument for 100% rating for me, but 70's fair. I'm also 100% PNT. I'm already there. I don't need to make more arguments, and I'm not going to make the SMCS argument either until my rating's protected for 20 years. But task completion of life, yeah, actually, it just goes on and on in there. But yeah, self care is just not a problem for me. You could use a little self care there. There's this thing called a razor.
Yeah, but there's also this thing called continuity, but we won't go there. You know exactly what I'm talking
This is true. All right. Let's see. So, kind of going back to the 0% rating, I like that. And just kind of even more broadly, this is, we're going to talk about some of the other changes. It's tinnitus / hearing loss and sleep apnea. We're going to break those down into separate ones because we want to go down all the rabbit holes. This one looks like it's actually going to be beneficial for veterans, even though none of this stuff's really that beneficial for veterans. That's just not how the VA works. So I like the 0% rating going away. What do you think?
Well, I do too. Because there, how can you have a 0%? How can you be diagnosed with something and have a 0% and have a 0% evaluation? Because you've answered to get a 0, you'd have to have none on everything. So if you have none on everything, how do you have a diagnosis of something? So the fact that you had at least a mild on one thing, that qualifies your diagnosis, which gets you the 10% minimum rating.
It kind of seems oxymoronic to me, right? Like I don't need a diagnosis of something of a condition that I don't have. It's just funny that they had to spell that out. They didn't do it across the board, but they did do it in certain categories, and this is one of them.
Right.
So I'm sure whoever's changing this stuff in Congress is like, whoever's been there for like 80 years. I don't know. There's some people that have been in Congress for a while. They actually helped implement that 0% back in the day, probably. They're probably still in Congress. It's just kind of funny. Hey, Bob or Biden or whatever, he's the president. But, now we're going to undo this little thing you and your clan did back in 82. All right. Anything else you want to keep going down this list at all? Is
Well,
there some that
I
I
mean,
got it
it
for me?
depends if we want to talk about the elimination of the rating formula for eating disorders, which is right below that chart. I know before we started.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was what I was having problems with. All right, so we'll throw that on the screen here, and yeah, so give us a little breakdown of the eating disorders, why they were in with mental health, and what's going to happen to them.
Well, it looks like I said, there was two eating disorders that were previously in there. Anorexia nervosa and then bulimia nervosa under diagnostic codes 9520 and 9521. Those were the two, and they had the rating formula, for that, and it had to do with weight loss and everything else, and binge eating. So you had those sort of things that were involved as far as the rating schedule goes. Now it looks like when we read through this, Um, it does look like that where they're going with this. As previous noted, current 4.130 includes two separate formulas for mental disorders. So you have the general rating formula for mental and then the rating formula for eating. The VA created a separate formula for eating disorders because their more disabling aspects are manifested primarily by physical findings rather than psychological. So that's why they're splitting them up. Is because um, it's because they feel through their own study that it's that bulimia and anorexia is more physical than mental.
Those ones kind of jumped out to me when I first saw them anyway. I wonder, does a DSM-5 have something to do with it? I would think maybe, or maybe this is a VA doing something on their own. Any any
No, they're
thoughts?
included. I mean, they're included in the DSM-5, but like I said, it's more that I think because it's more psychological. That's not. It's more physical rather than psychological. They felt the need to keep them separate. Um, however, in the DSM-5, the only eating disorder for which weight is a diagnostic criterion is anorexic nervosis, and that's based on the BMI, and it's used specifically to specify the current severity of the disorder. And weight and BMI are not a diagnostic criteria in the DSM-5 for other eating disorders such as bulimia nervosa and a binging disorder, nor are they specifiers for the severity of other eating disorders. So it looks like that's why they're trying to, at minimum, keep them separated.
And they don't. This is another one of those kind of things. It is possible to have one of they don't cover all eating disorders. They cover bulimia and anorexia. So if you have one of the other ones, it's not in here. It is possible, I guess, probably kind of a little far fetched to go through life and be 40, 50 years old and just find out now that you have bulimia or anorexia, but anything's inside the realm of possibility. But basically, if you have one of these things because you've probably been doing it for a while, although it could just start suddenly due to something like a secondary kind of thing. But you probably know if you have this. So if you don't, like I have no problems with anorexia or bulimia. So this is one I would, okay, don't have that. Move on to the next thing on the DBQ or,
Here's an,
what else do I have?
here's an important point to raise, and it says based on this is in that second paragraph toward the middle of it. It says based on
Let me get to there. So second paragraph. So is it under the elimination of rating formula? Second paragraph.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
halfway through, based on upon the diagnostic criteria and severity specifiers for most eating disorders in the DSM-5 and the university applicability of the HUDAS 2.0, VA no longer sees a need for separate rating formula for eating disorders, and the VA proposes to instead evaluate the extent of disability caused by eating disorders based on the effect of an individual's disorder on the five domains of functioning under the general rating. So you're going to be evaluated for an eating disorder under the general rating formula of, they keep on saying five, but there's six here. I think that's just a fuck up or a typo because there's six
I,
specific
I see
domains.
that too. Yeah.
They keep on saying five. Um, but so now your eating disorder is going to be evaluated under cognition, how your eating disorder, how your interpersonal interactions and relationships deal with, how they contribute to your eating disorder, how your task completion like activities contribute to your eating disorder, how navigating environments contributes to it, how self-care contributes to it. So your eating disorders are going to be a part of a part of how these domains for mental health impact those disorders, and you'll be evaluated in the same way.
You know what this kind of sounds like or reminds me of, or something smells like bullshit? TBI symptoms and mental health symptoms, if they're pulled apart and clear, you could get ratings for both, specifically like a 70% for TBI and a 70% for mental health. But the way that's currently set up, you usually just get 70% for both of them. It kind of seems like they're kind of doing a combo thing here, designed to pay veterans less. If I'm kind of reading this right, what do you think?
Um, it's possible, but there's not a whole lot of over. I mean,
Yeah, you're right. We're not doctors here, but yeah, I'm with you. The overlap, yeah, not there.
and the the WHODAS 2.0 is your World Health Organization Disability Assessment Schedule. If anyone was wondering what the fuck the WHODAS was.
I actually didn't wonder until that whole bug thing happened a couple of years ago. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't even know. Yeah, should know all my acronyms and government agencies, but now I know who they are. So, what's the DAS part? World Health Organization is DAS like database or something?
No, it's a Disability Assessment Schedule.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Cool.
It's almost like the World Health Organization's ICD codes.
Okay, that makes sense. Great way to break that down. Anything farther down this page that's jumped out at you at all, or I'm scrolling
Because
through it?
all they're talking about after that, they're talking about a proof of
Yeah, if you
concepts.
scroll down, just kind of to your point where you're like, I think that this was a fuck up. I'm down the page a little bit. Part four schedule for reading disabilities, 4.126. Yeah, it's got five categories: cognition, interpret. So that's weird. They say six, but there's five. Not more VA tomfoolery. It looks like, or a fuck up.
Yeah, or someone just can't count. Either way.
Yep. Old callback Craig might have been in there. So I guess if we're scrolling down, this is what it's supposed to look like. We'll see if it actually does look like this, right? When it's in the law.
And supposedly we're looking at sometime in April 2025, but that remains to be seen. But that's the date being kicked around now, is in sometime in April in 2025. So we're only we're 6 months, we're 7 months away from this kicking into place.
This brings up it, and for any changes that are happening in the future. So, like, I'm maybe on active duty or I'm kicking around filing a claim or whatever, and I'm finally wrapping my head around it, and then boom, this change happens. Like, tinnitus is going to do this, or sleep apnea is going to do this. My thought on that is file your claim, and like, you're just going into the process. The law is going to be what the law is going to be. Focus on proving your claim, understanding what the law is now. No need to hurry and do it wrong, but there's no need to wait either, especially if you've been waiting on it for 30 years and been getting, fucked over by the VA. So understanding what the current criteria is, what we're talking about now is not the current criteria. It's going to change. So understand what the current criteria is and file your claim and have the medical evidence to support that. When this change actually happens, we'll see it. We'll see it in the law. It's not going to be too major. Just kind of generally speaking, they just kind of break out social and occupational impairment and explain it in a little bit better way. Navigate. What is that one called? Navigating. That one leaps out at me. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, scroll back.
Navigating environments versus
Right.
social impairment. That one for me is beneficial. I understand it better.
Well, because it affects you
So
more. Each domain is going to affect everybody differently, but the ones that the ones that hit home for you, and everyone's going to be a different one. Navigating environment, that's important to you.
Well, it hits me differently, but it's just this is easier for me if I was new to this. It's easier for me to understand. I understand social and occupational impairment and how it fits in because that's the current law. So I had to just, it was a little harder for me to get my head wrapped around it, but I do understand both of them for sure.
right, and that's actually come over the past year as far as that's concerned, when that was finally
Right.
broken down to you in an easy to understand way.
Yep. And we're continuing to learn here, right? Like at the end of the day, this is about you, your disability, and getting paid. Healthcare is the Veterans Health Administration. I would argue, what if they actually give health care? That's why I don't go, but that's their stated thing. The Veterans Benefits Administration is all about benefits. They don't care about your health. They care about checking to see if your health is the way, your disability is the way that it is. So you need to prove your claim. This is you. This is your claim. You need to get your own VA claims file. If you want to sign over a power of attorney to a VSO, that's a county VSO that works for free, and you want that level. I'm not saying all VSOs are bad, just all the ones that work for me, because it's my fault, right? I hired a VSO, gave them the power of attorney to do whatever they wanted to do, and I got poor results. So that's on me. I no longer do it. I can do a better job managing my claim because this is financial. I'm biased, and my money is only important to me. It's kind of the way I look at the VA benefits part.
Let me clarify one thing, or at least bring up one thing.
Go for
Um,
it.
you're talking about VBA and VHA being two separate entities under the umbrella of the VA.
Third
Keep in
one
mind,
being cemeteries.
wait, well, yeah, and the other being the VCA, the Veterans Cemetery Association. But the one thing to keep in mind, these three, while they're under the same umbrella, they don't necessarily communicate with each other. So if you're at the hospital and you update a change of address, you need to go and contact VBA and update your address in their system as well. Even though they see the same information, they're not, just because you update your address if you move, because every time you go to your VA doctor, they'll say, is your address, your phone number, your contact information, is it the same? If you update it in one system under VHA, that doesn't update. You can't assume because it doesn't happen. You have to contact the VBA and say, hey, I need to update my information in your system as well, because they don't talk to each other.
Umbrella is a strong word, and I wouldn't use it because they're not under the same umbrella. They're not even in their same silos. They are just different companies, and they're insurance companies. And you're absolutely right. That's what happened to me. I would tell the VHA, what's your marital status? Divorced now. The VBA never got that information because they're a different company, and I never told them. So when I won my claim, they did some back pay stuff because I was going out there unknowingly. Ignorance is no excuse, right? You just unknowingly, so they clawed that money back. That happens. But updating your dependents is not a claims action. You don't need to be afraid of it. It's not going to trigger anything for them to look in your claim. It's something you need to do. Your dependents need to be on point. You're either not getting paid for them and there's no back pay for it, so you're screwing yourself, or you're still getting paid for a wife that you divorced 2 years ago, and they will be coming back for that money.
Updating dependents is a post VSR function. You have a pre VSR, which does development. You have a rater who does the actual rating decision. And then you have a post VSR who does the promulgation, dependents, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah,
Post
that is.
VSR function. I like that. That's I've never heard it like that.
Well,
Do you
there's.
have more?
Yeah, there's two different types of well, really, there's three. I mean, you've got non-rating VSRs, you've got your pre-VSRs, and you got your post-VSRs. But your post-VSRs handle the VSR responsibilities that need to be done after a rating decision is done. So, adding dependents, removing dependents, things of that nature. It's not going to trigger like you said, it's not going to trigger a new claim, but it falls under their purview as far as whose responsibility it is, how it gets routed, and everything else. So it'd be a
So
post
as a
VSR.
RVSR, are you in the pre-process because the actual decision hasn't been made yet?
We are the in between. I mean, they
Right.
make the
So there's an
claim.
in-between part too, right?
Yeah, they're. I mean, the VSR is supposed to do all the development action. They make the claim ready to rate, and if the claim's not ready to rate because we find X, Y, and Z wrong with the claim, development wise, we send it back to get fixed, or we do a partial rating, and then those deferred issues go back and get fixed by the previous R.
So you're either pre or unnamed because you're not post for sure. But you're
Correct.
definitely not pre upfront initial claim. Does this guy have medical? Like there's definitely more defined pre's before they get to the RVSR. Is my
Well,
question.
at one point in time, everyone was cross trained. As far as a VSR goes, you were cross trained on either you were cross trained to do pre, post, and non rating. But now you have pre-teens and you have post teens, and then you have non rating teens. Excuse me. So yeah, but I mean, teams also get shuffled in the VA to where they want to change coaches, which is a supervisor position in VBA. They want to change coaches. They want to kind of shuffle things around. They want to make you feel uncomfortable. You might get shifted from a pre-VSR team to a post-VSR team, and guess what? It's all part of being a VSR, so you're expected to know it. Whether you do or not, because you haven't done post work in 10 years, you're supposed to hop right back in and know immediately how to do post work when you haven't done it in 10 years. Good luck with that.
Well, it sounds like we're so in the weeds here. I am so glad that va.gov has a way to show us exactly what's going on behind the scenes, so I have an accurate representation of what you guys are actually doing behind the scenes. And I'm full of shit. Do not look at the online thing. That's even worse than trying to figure out what he just said. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, right? Like that's basically the point here. That stuff is all out of your control. You don't need to learn about it. It changes and it doesn't matter. File your claim, prove it up front with medical evidence so you don't have to enter the appeals process. And the how the sausage is made bullshit is going to be how it's made. Who cares? It's going to take you anywhere from inside of 24 hours to they forget about you and you die. That's how long it's going to take to adjudicate your claim. Average times, they have them posted. It's probably 5 or 6 months. That sounds about average to me, but every claim's a little bit different. Be prepared up front.
And also, because the VA is reactive, so whatever fire Congress wants to light under the VA's ass, that's what their priority is going to be. So if they have a priority of, okay, there's a backlog of PACT Act cases, well, then that's going to take the VA's priority. So, a fully developed claim, which normally is pretty quick, well, that might put on the back burner because the VAs are being reactive to PACT Act claims because that's what Congress has lit a fire under their ass about. So priorities change on a daily basis with the VA. So there's no, without being in the weeds and knowing what the VA's priority is at any given time, there's no way anyone could possibly guess how quick or how slow a claim is going to be. And that's just that's a factual statement.
That's factual, and it really doesn't matter, right? It's going to take as long as it's going to take, and you are in the process. You are, you are the RVSR. You didn't even know. Like, Combat Craig files a claim. Somehow I have a connection to you, and you're even the guy that's going to be adjudicating it. That conversation would never happen because it just doesn't. You don't know where you're going to be 3 months down the road when the other guys get this thing to your desk, and right, you don't even know how long it's going to take.
And specifically, if that scenario, if a claim came across my desk and for some unknown reason, I just happen to know the people, that is whether it's a conflict of interest or not, there is a perception of a conflict of interest. I have to notify my supervisors and say, hey, I know this individual. This individual's a cousin, whatever the case might be. He's my next door neighbor. Can you please give this to somebody else to adjudicate for me?
The VA is definitely not going to be moving quickly and making your life easier and all that kind of stuff. But for sure, they will find out about that conflict and be like, oh, hey, Raider X, who's Junior Raider X over here? It looks like your cousin. Why'd you rate his claim? They will find stuff like that. They like finding all the good stuff across the board. Negative medical evidence, things you did wrong. Just kind of talk about a Raider a little bit and what kind of time you have. Can you explain a little bit about the production schedule stuff, like kind of Like what kind of clock is on you? I've explained it a couple times, but I'd like you to
Well,
explain it to the
they
folks.
updated. They most recently updated the production standards um, in April, and I left in February. So there's actually a new set of production standards that's out that I don't currently have a copy of. I could easily get a copy of if we want to have a future discussion on this. But just suffice it to say, you barely have time to eat lunch and take a shit during the day, um, because there's that much work that's expected to be produced out of you. You don't have time to bullshit with your neighbor if you're in the office. They micromanage the hell out of you if you're in the office. You're
That
in.
does bring up a good point, though, right? Because we've talked about this when the bug happened and everybody was at home. The production standard was just as gnarly, right?
Yes.
Because they're just hovering all over you wherever you are, and a lot more people are still a lot more raters working at home now or in the office or maybe going to the office once a week versus 5 days a week. Do you
Uh,
just do you have a sense of that?
Most are 2 days a week, or 2 days of pay period. So pay periods every 2 weeks. So you're in there once a week. But also, if they can pull you in for any reason, because work from home is a privilege, not a right. So if they
Right.
want to jerk you around and you're, for whatever reason, you're not meeting your numbers or whatever, they can pull you back into the office at any time. And the way these offices are set up, they're set up with half walls. So you have, I mean, you
And the
have
walls
super.
are probably made out of glass, the half walls.
Well,
So, and there's probably a camera over you.
oh no, there's for
Oh yeah,
sure cameras everywhere. I wouldn't say the extent that they're right directly over you watching your keystrokes, but
they
there's
don't
a way.
need to because it's a PTZ camera. They can zoom in 100 feet like I can from my house.
But I mean, but they can definitely monitor your keystrokes without having to have a camera over your keyboard.
Logging keystrokes, they actually do that shit, right?
Yes.
So there's like a guy or a girl that's like goes and checks that
If
potentially.
potentially they could. If you give them a reason to investigate you, they will.
If you're, let's say you're put on a what's a PIP, a personal improvement plan, or they have some kind of
Yes.
equivalent of that in the VA, right? So
Yes.
if you get put on one of those, you're probably, and it's due to low productivity reasons. I bet the
Or
keystroke
quality.
logger chick has probably been.
There's two types of PIPs. There's a PIP based on quality. So you're getting a case reviewed and you're getting errors called on it. So you have to maintain a quality score and a production score. So you can get put on a PIP for being under the threshold for either one of those two. Um, and at that point, you're usually given 90 days to improve your performance. And if you're unsuccessful, you could actually get removed from your position if you fail it. If you fail it after the 90-day PIP period, they could, if they wanted to, remove you from your job, or they could downgrade you. I mean, there's a lot of different things they can do. But yeah, you know,
I never got that far to the PIP. I was in a fight with the boss or telling him to fucking kick rocks or he's a fucking fag or something like that way before there was any kind of. I was already done before personal improvement. So you said production and quality, right?
yes, there's production
So if I was
quality.
gonna pick, the importance of one, production would probably be where the focus is versus the quality. If I was the VA, just more faster. I don't know if that's always been the case, but it kind of seems like it is now.
Well, they want you to balance it. They want you to produce at a certain speed, but also maintain a certain level of quality. So that's the
So,
balance you have to.
is this 0 to 100 scale? These things, or how is that measured? Production and quality. Are they?
Well, I mean, production, you have to make X amount of points a day, whether it be 8 points a day, whatever the number is. You are assigned, depending on the type of case you have. You are assigned, so many points per issue. You know, there's a spreadsheet that kind of lays everything out. That a 5 issue initial claim. is worth 2.67 points. You have to get, if you're getting having to get like 8.7 points a day, you're looking at that's what, 3 or 4 initial claims you'd have to do during a day. So it all depends. There's a lot of factors that are involved. You get points for ordering VA exams. There's ways to make production, but um, you're also can get caught up in the weeds in cases, and you have to kind of balance it. And you're gonna say, "Fuck it, should I just push this issue through? Hope Well, I've got 3 cases that get pulled each month. I already had all 3 cases pulled where I say, fuck it, I'm not worried about quality and just let it go through. Fingers crossed. There's raters who do that for
So this
sure.
kind of sounds like it could potentially, if I was in it, I could adopt a victim mentality. And I don't know, you have or have not how close this is to you, but guess what? I don't give a fuck. If you don't like your job and you don't like this, go get a different job. Don't work for the government and don't work as a raider. People
Right.
that get in there that can deal with all this stuff should be doing it. And I'm not saying you are, or we're not that guy. You are one of the good guys for sure. That's why you're here.
You just say
And you're one of the good guys.
there is a high turnover ratio in the VA, and a lot of people just after a while couldn't cut it. I
And
mean,
these
you've
are
got
the types. Oh, go ahead.
you've got a probation period that you have to serve anyways. As a VSR, there's an initial 1 year probation period, and there is VSRs that are getting released on day 364, day 365 because they just weren't quite picking it up.
This is
Same,
some of that embedded stuff in the VA that's just whatever it's called, where it's just broken and needs to be scrapped, except for the people that send the checks out, they're okay. The institutional problems across the board, they've been there since the Civil War or whenever the fucking VA started. So this is why this is not a political thing. We are in a political year. Political things are happening, but the next president, new or the same, whatever, that's not going to change these kinds of problems.
well, not to mention there's a lot of DEI hirings within all of federal government, VA included.
What is it called?
DEI,
What the hell does that mean?
diversity, diversity, equality, and inclusivity. That is a
Okay,
hot.
so you're talking about, so like we would be a good example of that, right? We're both white. It's not a crime to be white, and I can't change it. But you are bearded, and I'm not bearded. So there's a lot of diversity
Reverse
going on.
discrimination. I will say it. There is reverse discrimination that goes on in the federal government.
Yep, happens everywhere. Get used to it. It's not going anywhere. All right, let's check out a couple. I don't know if you can see the comments. Maybe do a couple comments. We've been babbling here for a while. Hopefully, you got some good information. Hopefully, you got some good information. Again, if you want to learn, like this is the kind of the in the weeds stuff knowledge that I have, and Raider X has, and we talk about this stuff in boot camp. It will help you with your claim. You will learn something whether you're in active duty, in the BDD process, or you've been out for 50 years. So my boot camp, you can sign up for that at combatcraig.com. And also, somehow or another, this is all this bullshit we've been talking about is irrelevant because this is a medical disability you're filing a claim for. You need positive medical evidence that supports your story so you can get paid. If you need medical evidence, you can't find a doctor to give you a diagnosis, check out my med team. You can contact them at combatcraig.com. And let's just go for a couple questions here. Looks like that equality versus diversity struck a nerve with a few people. And yep, that
Homie.
happens. VA, yeah. So this is VA Raiders high turnover rate like Taco Bell, huh? Yeah, that's basically what's happening and what he's saying. And you're probably, a lot of these things, Raider X, like, there was a change in April, but you were there for a long time. The government moves slow. You have a pretty good sense of, here's the changes and how they're probably being implemented. And you're probably good for the next 10 years.
I would hope so.
you get a good flavor of what's going on is my point. So if it just happened and you haven't have firsthand knowledge of it, your best guess is probably good. Let's see. So Barry, this is what we were talking about. I don't know how to make this comment. Not. Let me. I don't know how to make this thing fit. All right. So you have CMP exam on Monday for PTSD increase. Will they use the new format that you're talking about? The answer is no, because the law has not been changed yet. So this will be rated under the current criteria, and then if you keep your eyes on the CFR Part 4 schedule for rating disabilities, that will change someday, and you'll find that if you stay up on it. So this will be using the current rating criteria.
We're looking
But
at April.
either way, that really doesn't matter too much, because go talk about your symptoms and tell them how fucked up you are. If you have doesn't matter if it's whatever that term is, navigating environments, or the current words, hypervigilance, fucking paranoid as shit. That's all the same thing. Talk about how that manifests itself, every minute of every day, if that's the case for you. It is
Hey,
for me.
Mr. Ray 504, the name is Raider X, not the other guy. Combat Craig has referred to me as Raider X plenty of fucking times. So I'll be disrespectful all I want. I'm not the other guy. So it's
Right,
Raider
he's
X.
with me. Yeah, he's not a guest. He's here. So and he's here for we're together. We work, we bounce off of each other, we argue with each other. The whole thing's good. We both have different perspectives, but yeah, he's not the other guy, and he will be back constantly. And I'm glad to have him, even though he's a dickhead. You didn't catch that. He's just going to let that one go. That's nice. Let's
That's
see. So Elvin says, don't let VSO handle your VA claims. Most attorneys will rep you for free. So let's just kind of talk about the differences between VSOs and attorneys. So VSOs are just kind of just put there, and a lot of them are not paid, and most all of them are underpaid, and they also have production schedules and whatever AMVETS is doing. So they are not motivated financially, or they don't have skin in the game. Whether you get an increase and get more money or not, they still get paid or not paid, or whatever, however that looks. And they're not qualified to argue claims because they're not lawyers. So going over to lawyers, lawyers are lawyers. They charge money. They go after claims and take cases they can win to make money. I like that model in general, because now I want to make money and the lawyer wants to make money. Like, at least we're motivated by money, because that's what these benefits all translate into. But most attorneys, they don't rep you for free. You can't get them up front. You can, but they won't rep you up front and help you file a claim before you fuck it up. They get involved in the appeals process. And it's never free. It's 20%, I believe, if you go through normal VA channels, but a lot of lawyers charge 33 or
there's a
40% or something.
cap
What's that?
on it. There's a cap on
Huh?
it, or how much they can charge. And I want to say that
Well,
cap
there's a
is
cap on the 20%. Matt Hill explained this to me, because, like, if you just go through the VA process, or that power of attorney thing, that's the 20% one. And he's like, yeah, we charge more than that. So it's a different non-VA document agreement that they do.
I want to say it's capped out at 40.
I don't. There may be, and that sounds right, but I didn't hear that from him. But I mean, there's like a logical cap too. Like, oh, okay, 60%. No thanks. So
And
anyway, that's
everything's
the
all
difference between VSOs and attorneys. Let me see. Do you see any comments that are easy for me to get to?
I just wanted to tell Mr. Ray 504, all's good. He just walked in. He didn't know who I was, so we're all good.
All right. I'm getting stuck in the comments here. So thanks for showing up today. We got a couple of super chat guys. Oh, we can throw these on the screen. Book your feelings. Nice username. That's a good one. Thanks for the couple bucks. And another one from VI, whatever that is. And all right, cool. Learning new features on Ecamm Live here. All right, you guys. Name of the game is Fight, Fight, Fight. For those of you that are going to be showing up tomorrow for our boot camp live, we will both be there. We'll see you then, or we will see you tomorrow. And generally speaking, we are both going to be doing the tinnitus changes and the sleep apnea changes next. And live seems to be the way we're doing them now. So bye. Later, man.
All right. Have a good one.